The stadium lights had finally dimmed, and the roaring ocean of voices that once filled every corner of the arena slowly faded into the night. The third day of the ARIRANG World Tour had come to an end, an explosive, emotional, and unforgettable night that fans would carry with them for the rest of their lives. From breathtaking performances to powerful vocals that shook the entire venue, everything about the concert felt larger than life. The stage had been a battlefield of passion, energy, and artistry, and at the center of it all stood Jeon Jungkook, giving everything he had, every note, every movement, every ounce of his strength. But as the final song ended and the last wave of cheers echoed into silence, something changed. The stage was no longer the focus. The spotlight shifted, not to another performance, but to a moment no one expected to see. Behind the stage, away from the cameras, beyond the bright lights and the thunderous applause, there was a quieter world. A narrow hallway lined with equipment cases, racks of outfits, and staff members moving quickly yet calmly as they wrapped up one of the biggest nights of the tour. The energy there was different, not explosive, not chaotic, but real, and it was there, far from the eyes of thousands, that something truly unforgettable happened as Jungkook stepped off the stage, his body still carrying the exhaustion of the performance. There was no dramatic celebration, no immediate rest, no moment to fully process what had just happened. Instead, he walked, quickly, with purpose. Staff members greeted him, some smiling, some congratulating him on the incredible performance. But Jungkook's focus seemed elsewhere. His eyes moved past everything, scanning, searching as if he was looking for someone. And then, he found her, standing quietly in the backstage area, wearing a simple outfit. Her presence, calm yet deeply emotional, was the person who had been there long before the fame, long before the world tours, long before the stadiums filled with millions of fans, his mother. The moment lasted only a second before everything changed. Without hesitation, Jungkook stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her tightly, completely. It wasn't a quick hug. It wasn't a casual greeting. It was something deeper, something real. A moment that carried years of memories, struggles, sacrifices, and love all at once. Staff nearby paused. Some smiled softly. Others quietly looked away, as if understanding that this was not a moment meant for interruption. Because what was happening in that small backstage space was far more powerful than anything that had just taken place on stage. Jungkook leaned into the embrace, his expression softening in a way fans rarely get to see. The intensity, the focus, the powerful stage presence, it all melted away, revealing something more vulnerable, more human, more personal. His mother held him just as tightly, her arms wrapping around him with a sense of warmth and familiarity that no one else could replicate. It was the kind of embrace that didn't need words, because everything was already understood. In that moment, there was no global superstar, no idol, no performer, just a son and a mother, witnessing it from a distance. Some staff members couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. After all, they had seen the performance. They had watched Jungkook give everything he had on stage, his energy, his voice, his emotions. And now, they were seeing the other side, the quiet aftermath, the return to something real, the return to where it all began. As the embrace continued, there was a small shift. Jungkook pulled back slightly, looking at her, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief, exhaustion, and something deeper, something emotional, something that words couldn't fully capture. Did he say anything? No one knows for sure, but he didn't need to. Because sometimes, the most meaningful conversations happen without words. A gentle smile, a small nod, a look that says everything. Those were the things that mattered. His mother responded with the same quiet understanding, her presence steady, her expression filled with pride. Not the loud, overwhelming kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that has been there all along, the kind that watched from the beginning. From the days before the stage lights, before the fame, before the world knew his name. As the moment slowly unfolded, the noise of the outside world felt distant. The cheers of thousands of fans, the flashing cameras, the viral moments spreading across social media, they all seemed far away. Because here, in this small backstage space, none of that mattered. What mattered was this connection, this reunion, this moment of stillness after the storm. Eventually, reality began to return. Staff members gently resumed their movements, the flow of post-concert activity continuing as it always does. There were schedules to follow, responsibilities to handle, a tour to continue, but the moment lingered. Even as Jungkook and his mother slowly stepped apart, the impact of what had just happened remained, because moments like that don't disappear. They stay. They become part of the story, and as word of the backstage interaction began to spread, quietly at first, then more widely, fans around the world felt it. Even without seeing the full moment, even without hearing the words, they understood, because they had seen the performance, they had felt the energy, they had witnessed the intensity, and now, knowing that behind all of that, there was a simple, emotional reunion between a son and his mother. It changed everything. That it added depth, that meaning, that humanity to an already unforgettable night. As discussions grew, fans shared their reactions, many expressing how the moment made them emotional, how it reminded them of their own families, their own journeys, their own moments of support and connection. Because at the end of the day, beyond the fame and the spotlight, there is something universal about a moment like that. The need to return to reconnect, be seen not as what the world expects, but as who you truly are. And for Jungkook, that moment came not on stage, but behind it, not in front of thousands, but in front of one. The one who had been there from the very beginning. As the night came to a close and the ARIRANG World Tour prepared to move forward, one thing became clear. The concert was unforgettable. The performances were incredible. The energy was unmatched. But the moment that stayed with people the most was the quiet one. The one that happened away from the lights. The one that wasn't meant to be seen. The one that reminded everyone that no matter how big the stage becomes, some connections remain the same. Unbreakable, endless, and full of love. The hallway slowly returned to its rhythm, but the emotional echo of that quiet embrace refused to fade. It lingered in the air, subtle yet powerful, like a heartbeat beneath the noise of post-concert activity. Staff continued moving equipment, stylists organized outfits, and security exchanged brief updates. But something had shifted, not visibly, not loudly, but undeniably. Jeon Jungkook stood there for a moment longer after the embrace, as if grounding himself. His shoulders, which had carried the weight of an entire stadium just minutes ago, seemed lighter now. There was still exhaustion written across his face, the kind that only comes after pushing beyond limits. But there was something else too, relief. A quiet, steady kind of relief that only comes from being understood without needing to explain anything. His mother adjusted her posture slightly, still close, still watching him with the same calm expression. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. But it carried years of unspoken stories, of early mornings, of sacrifices made in silence, of believing in something before the world ever did. And now, here they were, in a narrow backstage space. After one of the biggest nights of his career, together. A staff member approached gently, careful not to interrupt the moment too abruptly. There were schedules to follow, transitions to manage, but even in their professionalism, there was respect. A quiet pause, a subtle understanding that this moment mattered. Jungkook nodded slightly, acknowledging the call of responsibility, but before he moved, he looked back at his mother once more. That look said everything. Not goodbye. Not even thank you. Something deeper, something that only exists between people who have walked a long road together.